Hi, good evening. This is Mark Pukita, and this is the latest edition of Mark Pukita's Truth Bomb. If it looks like I'm in a bunker somewhere in the liberal state of Maryland, you guessed it right, I am. I'm visiting family here, my two grandsons, and but we're not going to let up on Mark Pukita's Truth Bomb. Tonight, we're going to have something really interesting for you. We have, first of all, policy roulette, which we've done before, but then we're going to continue talking about corruption, and we're going to highlight editorials that were done on corruption, specifically Ohio Republican Party corruption, and we'll talk about that in the second segment. And then we'll do some free form, and I hate to sound negative, but we're going to talk about more corruption. But the good news is that we're getting a lot of good feedback on what we're doing in terms of exposing corruption, especially in the Ohio Republican Party. People are jumping on our Senate campaign, and I truly do believe that we are seeing a sea change, and that we are going to clean up corruption not only in Ohio, but across the nation. Then we're going to do a quick campaign update. So we might as well get started with segment one, Policy Roulette. Joining me tonight, as usual, is Chris Hicks to talk about our policy roulette topics and others. Chris, how are you doing? You're not at home either, are you?
I'm doing good. I'm balancing you out since you're in a bunker in Maryland. I'm in a not a bunker. I'm in a condo. So you're going more liberal. I'm conservative than Ohio, and but you're probably going more good. Corrupt, and I'm going less corrupt in terms of where I'm going, where I'm located. So. Hope you're doing well, and I didn't show you this, Mark, but I'm going to show you it now. Put on my Make America Great Again hat that I wore at the Trump Orlando event yesterday, and if you look real close at it, it has Christmas ornament decorations on the Make America Great, like a colored Christmas, and it says Merry Christmas. If I get that lined up right. I'm not getting it. I'm not doing the right job. It says Merry Christmas on the back. Right there. So this is an official Donald Trump hat that my friend that I went to see Trump in Orlando with got me back in 2016. There was a limited edition Christmas mega hat. And so that's what I have when I'm wearing. So are you ready?
Very cool.
To get into some policy roulette?
I am. And just so everybody knows, we'll be picking topics out of the policy guide, the 2022 Senate policy guide that we put together as a campaign. We're the only campaign talking intensely about policy. So, Chris, why don't you explain the process, and we'll give it a go.
Well, the card has 21 areas on it. I think we've covered 7 so far. Seven so far that we drew out of the hopper here. And if you do not have a copy of one of these cards, go to a Mark Pukita event, go to markforohio.com and look for a Mark Pukita event where you can get a physical copy, or go to markforohio.com/policy if you want to see a virtual copy online. You can download a printable copy from there as well. So we like hitting these things. It's so funny, Mark, that you get a lot of people. I get a lot of people. I say, he's got, I don't have one sitting in front of me, but you have your 7, you have your disrupt agenda, which is a very narrow set of things. And then this is across 21 things. There are a lot of people that say, when I tell them about the 21 things, they say, 21 things, like who reads that? Like too much to read. But I tell you folks, if you see this and you read ones that you care about, you get the whole card. Because we got to quit dumbing ourselves down. We got to quit dumbing ourselves down with politicians that just talk about the same little red things which they solve, because if they solved them, they wouldn't have them to talk about. So, and we've got, let's see what we come up with at random here. I'm going to reach in and pull one out of the hopper. And the number that I got, Mark, is number 6. So policy area number 6.
So policy area number 6 on the card,
which is try to put it up on the screen.
Environment and energy. Right there, environment and energy. So let me quickly read through these points and then we can discuss them, Chris. Point 1 is fight for clean coal, fracking, and nuclear in Ohio. Point number 2 is make the U.S. energy independent and make Ohio an energy exporter. Point number 3 is fight the political agendas behind global warming hysteria. And point number 4 is build pipelines. Those all are very, very...
Let's just start building pipelines.
Yeah. Common sense kind of policies, we believe. Ohio, as many people know, is resource rich. We're resource rich in coal, in gas for fracking. And as well, we have water both on the northern coast and the southern border of Ohio. And that makes for perfect spotting of nuclear plants, which we could ultimately become, because of that positioning, the geography, a net energy exporter, not only to the rest of America, but also perhaps to Canada and outside the United States. We really need to take advantage, like a business person would take advantage of which I am one, as opposed to a politician, take advantage of the resources and find a way to achieve value with them, what we've got here, make the best of what we've got, capitalize on that, create great jobs, create a vibrant economy, and create a positive environment for Ohioans to live in. So that's what I believe we need to do. And that would include, both in Ohio and outside of Ohio, building pipelines so we can transport these products that we generate, whether it be oil or gas, and get it to a destination who can pay for it. So it's pretty common sense, but it seems like the Biden administration, the minute Joe Biden got into office, he wanted to cancel construction of pipelines like the XL pipeline. And then again, we have to also focus on this global warming hysteria. It appears that socialist Democrats want to catastrophize, and that is a psychological term, catastrophize things like global warming and climate change. There's certainly climate change, but we've got to stop majoring in minor things, focusing on things that aren't science-based, and really think America first.
Well, I think, Mark, it's science is a political tool. So science is we've seen it with COVID, we see it with energy, see it with this the global warming hysteria. So yesterday, Trump in Orlando talked about energy, how we went from, in just 6 months, from an energy exporter with more energy than we knew what to do with, where the biggest issue, one of the biggest issues we had, is overproduction of energy in the U.S., driving prices down too far, to now we're backing the Saudi Arabians to the same old dependency of Middle East quicksand. And that was Trump's words, Middle East quicksand, on these types of things.
I love that term, Middle East quicksand. I'm going to pick up on that, I think.
All right. Anything else on environment and energy? But
by
the way, go ahead.
Go ahead.
One other thing Trump mentioned was that the last year of his presidency, he said were the 2 best years on record for clean air and clean water in the United States.
Right. We actually did better than the rest of the world, and we did better than the restrictions or the guidelines in the Paris Climate Accord. Yeah, absolutely. And that was just because of our free markets and people deciding that that's what they wanted to do. It's absurd. And at the same time, Chris, we had a booming economy, which would say we had a lot of production and we should have been producing more CO2, right? But we weren't.
Right. I know you live in Columbus and I live in Southern Ohio, and I drive along the river and you see all the coal plants are either closed or closing, and you wonder, I don't know where the electric plants are that are generating all of our electricity, but it's something that Trump also mentioned that, by the way, clean coal, clean gas, that the environment, that natural gas is a great clean form of energy, and we have more than we know what to do with
Right.
natural gas potential in the United States. You ready? Another
let's
one?
Go.
So let's go.
I feel like we should have some vibrant music between these choices, Chris.
I got number 10. It's hard to see the number there, but number 10 is the next one up.
Yes, lifestyle and family issues. Let me go through these points, and we can talk more in depth about them. The first point is get kids out of horrible environments where, for example, an orphanage would be better. The second point,
it's controversial,
but we need to talk about it. Point number 2, restore the role of parents and demand parents take responsibility. Point number 3, respect different lifestyles, but stop those who make crazy demands, such as men being able to use women's restrooms or compete in women's sports. We need to stop being concerned about people canceling us or shaming us because we talk about options that might be better than where we are today. So we have situations with children in foster homes, and we've seen that the trauma and just the absolute devastation that bad foster parents bring to that system. Not all foster parents are bad, but we went from an orphanage situation where we uncovered a few places that were run poorly and where children were abused. And we just said in a blanket statement, we're going to stop that, like we did with mental health. And I think we have to go back and look at some of these and say, can we run them better? Can we manage these better? And would that be a better result? Would that result in a better environment for children who are without parents or who have been subject to the devastation of the opioid crisis or things of that nature? And then this kind of gets back to just becoming better citizens or finding a way to build more community where we have parents wanting to be more responsible for the way their children are raised and how their children are educated, for example. We know that given a choice in education, parents will make the right choice for their kids if given options. So it's just really getting back to the future, I think, Chris, in some of these areas. And then we just need to use common sense. I mean, men using women's restrooms or men competing in women's sports, this is just ridiculous on its face. We shouldn't even be having these conversations, but yet we are. And as Dan Bongino likes to say, if someone in government can convince you that there are more than two sexes and that boys should be using women's restrooms, they can convince you of anything. And that's what we've run into here. It's ridiculous.
Well, you mentioned foster parenting, and I think, my understanding from reading things about the situation with a lot of kids or too many kids in America is that the desire, the system shift to keeping kids with their biological parents, regardless of the situations that the biological parents are being put in or put the kids in, is what is not good. And there's things worse than, the quote unquote orphanage type thing. And
right.
So what's funny, Mark, is I did a roundtable a long time ago with a state rep, and there were people talking, it was about education, and people were talking about how the school should have laundry facilities for washing kids' clothes. They should have food. They should have places for them to sleep if they couldn't sleep at home on a given night, and they should have medical treatment. They should have all this kind of stuff. And so the rep and I, after it was over with, we were sitting in get something to eat, and we were talking about it and said, those people basically described an orphanage. They described a situation where, and then I talked to another person I know that had come into contact with these things. And I don't know that a lot of people know this, how many new schools that are being built have these kind of facilities hidden away with them for doing the laundry for the kids and for doing a place for the sleep and things like that, a place to get them clothes. Because, and this is horrible to think that this goes on in America, but there are legitimately, and conservative friends of mine that have been involved in this, so it's not some, left-wing, right-wing thing, but there's legitimately kids that don't come to school because they cannot get their parents to wash their clothes. They do not have deodorant. They cannot take a shower. And that is unbelievable. And the fact that you would have kids with the biological parents that are being raised in that kind of manner is, we have to have honest discussions about those things.
Right.
So that's on your orphanage point, which I know some people will be offended by that point, but we got to have honest discussions about the plight of some kids when they're left with biological parents that are totally incapable of parenting.
And we know that if we allow the schools to do this, as compromised as our schools are by the progressive left in terms of things like critical race theory, letting them raise our kids is going to be just like the Soviets did when they took kids away from their families for a number of years and then sent them back to rat out their parents so they could be sent to the gulag.
Well, your second point about parents and so I like to say every now and then in defense of educators is that we ask grade school educators to deal with societal problems that they should never be in a position to have to deal with. Like kids that come to school and don't know their ABCs, don't know haven't gotten the basics of rearing that a school system expects that the parents have taught the kids certain things before they even get there. And I think that's what you're hitting on is, there's a parental responsibility part of this as well. And if the parents aren't responsible, then we're leaving it to these educators, and God only knows what happens to your kids then.
And I think this is what's happened with this whole cancel culture, and you're not allowed to speak up. I mean, my mom was telling me, my mom's 90 years old. She's like, listen, in my neighborhood, if I did something down the street that was wrong, those parents of the families that live there would come out and, literally discipline me and then drag me down to my home, and I'd get a double whammy for doing that. So you had consequences for actions. And I think as I said, we need to get back to the future. So we probably need to move on to the next one.
Yeah. But don't you think a lot of these things are, for as much as we sound depressing, I think talking about these things is that the biggest inhibitor to fixing these things is our inability to have honest conversations in our country and in our political class about what the real problems are so that we can actually fix them. The real problems aren't we need to have more free shit being given to kids through schools. The real problems are we need to have a parental system or some other system that is giving these kids a fighting chance. And it's not handouts that are going to give them a fighting chance. It's things like some way that when they come to school, they're prepared, that they live in environments where they can give clean clothes, they can take showers, they can have the basic things that we would expect as well. But you don't want to say anything more about men and using women's restrooms or competing in women's sports?
I mean, Chris, I don't know what more you can say about that. I mean, this is absolutely absurd on its face. The fact that we're having these conversations and we're arguing about it just shows how ridiculous our
things have become.
Yeah, our government, our government system, our educational system, our cultural system. It's just absurd.
Okay, let's tell you what, let's just do one more. We talked about doing 3 or 4 tonight. I'm going to pull one more out of here. Let's see what we get here. Number 14. So I'm going to flip on my guide. Take this one down for a second. I'm going to flip it to number 14.
Defense and security.
Here we go.
So let me read through these first, and then we'll talk about them. Point number 1, focus our military on lethality. Point number 2, remove woke generals in favor of Ulysses S. Grant, who's an Ohioan, by the way, type generals. Point number 3, better price performance in procurement and weapons. Point number 4, stop the military arms supplier revolving door. And then point number 5, better strategy in war, meaning fast, overwhelming, done, and stop endless nation building. So the number one point there is focus our military on lethality. The military should be used to protect us, and they should be feared, and everything should have to do with building warriors in a war fighting mission instead of achieving political objectives or taking our military and having them succumb to the same wokeness that the rest of society is succumbing to. We're teaching. We've got General Milley who thinks it's appropriate that war fighters, people who are designed and trained and selected to go out and kill our enemies, and wants to teach them critical race theory, diversity and inclusion, and all of that. It's ridiculous. He should be teaching them how to shoot better, how to fly better, how to bomb better, whatever it is. I mean, this is absolutely ridiculous. Let me tell you, there is no other military in the world that is doing this kind of thing. I have traveled around the world, Chris. Nobody else is doing this. And then on top of that, we have a very, very expensive military defense budget. And a lot of it comes from this revolving door of generals and senior officers retiring from the U.S. Armed Forces, going into the defense industry, often working on the weapons systems that they helped procure when they were in the Department of Defense. That's just got to stop. We need some overview and purview of that, and that, I thought, was the Senate's responsibility, the House of Representatives' responsibility, that these different armed forces committees, and they just all seem to be in collusion. It seems to be another corrupt part of our government that we'll talk more about, but it's got to stop. And then finally, we need to stop the nation building. We need to stop the whole idea that we're going to go out and turn other countries into the United States. You look at Afghanistan, the tribalism there. When we go in, if we need to have an objective, it needs to be a project mentality. There is a beginning, there is an end, there is a time frame, and there is a budget. We go in fast. We go in with overwhelming force and lethality. We figure out when we're done, and we get the hell out of there.
Mm-hmm. So Trump yesterday in Orlando got asked by Bill O'Reilly about General Milley. And why didn't he fire? Like, did he know that General Milley was as bad as he is? Type of thing. That wasn't the way he asked the question. Was kind of. And Trump said that he liked Milley, but when they did the thing where they went over to the church across the way and he held up the Bible and Milley was with him, and then Milley was apologizing for having participated in it. That was the first sign to Trump that there was something not right about Milley. and he gave. I'm trying to remember the other example he gave is. There were a couple of examples where Milley did stuff, he had liked him, where Trump said, I couldn't believe what he was saying or what he was doing. And it caused me to be very suspicious of what kind of person he was really underneath whatever veneer that he had. So that was kind of an interesting Trump comment on General Milley. But these woke generals, in this lack of focus, this idea that we have a humanitarian army that is about, I think, Mark, you've had in a couple of forums where people bring up, and some of your opponents are all over, we should pull the military out of Europe and other places and move it to the southern border to keep Haitians from coming across. And I don't know, maybe you have a comment on your view on that.
I'm 100% unequivocally against that. We have threats around the world, specifically China. We need to be able to redeploy, re-architect our armed forces deployment around the world to counter that threat. We need to get out of Europe. They can pay for their own defense against what is arguably a much weaker Russia, a Russia that we might be working with because we have worked with them on terrorism and things of that nature. But sending military to the border, that's absurd. Listen, Chris, if we finish the wall and we give the Border Patrol, the support that they need, Donald Trump, with the Border Patrol only, no military, had crossings at the border down to under 16,000 a month. We're now up over 200,000. That has nothing to do with law enforcement or armed forces being there. It has to do with crappy management coming out of Washington and specifically the Oval Office. Get Biden out of there, build a wall, get someone there that's got a spine, back the Border Patrol, and fix the problem.
Well, I'm going to do it as we move on, Mark. I'm going to do it like in Josh Mandel style. Build a wall, okay, and empower the Border Patrol. Build a wall and empower the Border Patrol. So maybe you'll go to Washington with that. Build a wall and empower the Border Patrol.
When I go to Washington,
and that's what we need to do. Not pull
build a wall, empower the Border Patrol. Build a wall. Okay, I got it.
And then not pull our military out of Taiwan, out of defending people that need it, because we're busy. We got Haitians coming in, so we got to move them over. All right, let's move on to segment 2, which is going to be talking about a few editorials that have been in the paper, relating to either ORP corruption or corruption in general. So, Mark, you had an editorial in the Columbus Dispatch that I put up here, and it said on December 2nd, the Ohio Republican machine rigged system to block primary challengers, Republican candidate says. Okay, so first off, a lot of people say this, so not just one Republican candidate.
Right.
I'm going to read a little excerpt from it and then let you comment on your editorial and some of the thoughts that you had on how your experiences and what you've learned from becoming a first-time citizen candidate and how the system works. It says, we all remember indicted former Ohio House Speaker Larry Householder and former Ohio Republican Party Chair Matt Borges. But what about disgraced former House Speaker Cliff Rosenberger and Uber donor Bill Lager, who never seems to be held accountable for $60 million pilfered in the electronic classroom of tomorrow scandal, ECOT. So that was one of the lines from your, editorial that was in the Columbus Dispatch. And, so I obviously agree with that and some of those things, but just maybe share with, some of your thoughts from your editorial or from what your experiences as to what how you've come along and seeing this for up close or as a candidate for office.
So, Chris, before I decided to primary Rob Portman in October of 2019, and I'm the only candidate that was willing to get into the race and do that, to primary a sitting U.S. senator. Everybody else got in after he quit. So they must have thought he was either doing a good job or they were afraid of him. Neither of those attributes are good to go fight the swamp rhinos, the deep state, socialist Democrats, and big tech in Washington. They're just not. But when I got in, I'm a pretty, I've been around the block. I ran a business for over 2 decades. I've seen it and done it. And I realize there are people that are going to try to rip you off, that are not going to be honest with you. And I'm a student of politics. I've been since the Jimmy Carter days. I thought it was going to be bad. It's 10 times worse than I ever thought. And I was aggressively cynical, overly cynical. And I love it when Republicans, insider Republicans want to talk about the Democrats being corrupt. They have no business talking about corruption of the Democrats when we've got a laundry list of corruption in the Ohio Republican Party. We had it up on the screen a few weeks ago, but it's much more than Cliff Rosenberger, Larry Householder, Bill Lager. I mean, it goes on and on and on, including right now in the Ohio Republican Party, a $2 million accounting inconsistency that Bob Paduchik, the chairman of the Republican Party in Ohio, refuses to have audited. And wait for it. The bylaws of the Ohio Republican Party call for an audit every year, and we haven't had one in our party for 16 years. This is absolutely ludicrous.
Well, and they're still fighting it, and that's, I mean, it makes it even more ludicrous. So I'm gonna put up. I put up. This is from May of 2021, when the Dispatch ran an article that's the headline of which was, "In a league of its own, Ohio is #1 state when it comes to public corruption, experts say." You're a political candidate, Mark. I thought you wanted Ohio to be #1, but I'm not sure about this #1. And I clipped this out of it, Mark, this article, that it has the amount of convictions, the amount of convictions. Let me see if I can get it up here right. The amount of convictions per 100,000 of the population. And we're still low when this article came out, but it was talking about all this stuff. We're really moving up fast. And we're in the #1 ranking was based on the #1 amount of financial corruption of all states. And this was then talking about how we're working on getting #1 on the amount of convictions, which is shocking since we have a political system in Ohio that pretty much lets anybody do whatever they want and never holds them accountable for any of these things. But we were the 8th ranked state in terms of the number of convictions for political for corruption charges at a federal level. As of this time.
Yeah, and I would love to see that ranked by the amount of money that changed hands in pay-for-play schemes, because I think we would rank even higher than that, because they've just been spectacular. And listen, Chris, nobody in the Ohio Republican Party ever apologizes to voters or donors for this. In fact, they all look for plausible deniability. Remember Oliver North, when that term came up, they were looking for plausible deniability. They can say, oh, I looked the other way. I mean, we did something on Winterset CPAs where a treasurer or an assistant treasurer of a campaign in Ohio looked the other way on a $290,000 invoice. Right. This happens all the time in Ohio politics, and it needs to stop. Because if we need to clean up our house before we go demolish theirs. And I don't want to hear about Democrat corruption until we clean up the Republican Party. Otherwise, we're just hypocrites.
Well, and I just wanted to point out to you, I threw this up here. We haven't talked about this in advance, but this is from the Larry Householder indictment on July 30th of 2020, I think it was, or 2020. And so Jeff Longstreth, who was, Larry Householder's right-hand man, he was the signer on Generation Now, which is all the dark money stuff that was part of the $61 million. Did you know that at the same time, he was the head of the House Republican Campaign Committee? So at the same time, he's the head of the dark money group. He's the head of the House Republican Campaign Committee, running the campaigns of the people. And remember, coordination between dark money and campaigns is supposed to be illegal. And they just do it right in front of our faces. I'm going to flip to oh, by the way, this is a picture of Rob Secor, who testified to this, that the HRCC under oath, he testified, was run by Jeff Longstreth and Megan Fitzmartin. Megan Fitzmartin now works for,
wait a minute,
J.D. Vance.
Wait a minute. She works for J.D. Vance, but doesn't he work for Jane Timken?
He works for Jane Timken. So these would be great questions if we had reporters in Ohio to ask, why is Jane Timken employing somebody that was involved in the kind of irregularities that the ORP saw in 2020 in the sellout of the party to Larry Householder's crew? And why is J.D. Vance hiring Larry Householder's crooked inner circle to run his campaign? Because I think it's because, Mark, and I appreciate you saying that, it's because we've got to quit electing the same kind of people. They just pull the wool over our eyes again and again, and with the same retreads that many of these people, should have their day in court, frankly, versus get hired by the next campaign and have plausible denial. We didn't know anything that was going on.
Right.
So I'm going to flip.
These are the same people, Chris, that like to say, because you and I are calling out corruption, other people are calling out corruption in the Ohio Republican Party, that we're the enemy of the Ohio Republican Party.
These people are.
These people are telling us that they are the enemy of the Republican Party because they are doing these kind of things and they are ruining our great party.
Well, and what they do is we desperately need the next generation of conservative Republicans. I think we have the right policies. We have the right arguments. We can win the arguments. But when we are hypocrites and corrupt swamp creatures and rhinos and fake conservatives, then we cannot win the next generation of Republicans, because who wants to join a bunch of crooks? Okay.
Right.
I guess unless there's money in it for you, like these people that join up with whoever they can get their next paycheck from. Okay, I'm going to move forward here, but Laura Rosenberger, who's one of the state central committee members, also had an editorial that appeared recently on December 7th, and it says Ohio Republican Party needs accountability, must clean house. And I pulled a quote from hers. It says a new lawsuit against Paduchek outlines fiscal mismanagement runs rampant at the Ohio Republican Party. The 5 plaintiffs, including myself, have identified more than, your number's low, Mark, $3 million in missing funds with no adequate explanation. Paduchek and ORP treasurer misrepresented the money, failing the nearly 2 million Ohio Republicans who put their trust in leadership. When we called him out on the missing funds in a retaliatory move, Chairman Paduchek stripped us of our subcommittee assignments. So that's Laura Rosenberger's a piece from Laura Rosenberger. So we both know Laura Rosenberger, I think, reasonably well.
Yep.
So
she's a sitting Ohio Republican Party State Central Committee member. Right? She is one of the 66 elected members who are there to represent the membership, the members of the party. That party is ours. It isn't the ORP executive boards or the chairmans or Dave Johnson's or Dave Paduchek or
Bob
Paduchek's. But they've got this insider versus outsider mentality. They're the insiders. They tell us what to do. We're the outsiders. They want us there forever. We're going to talk more about corruption next.
Okay. So I'm going to put up, she had one other line in her thing that I wanted to share is out of her article. It said, only by cleaning house will the Ohio Republican Party survive and thrive. As Republicans now is our time to be a model for the rest of Ohio. Let's take advantage of it and bring in new leadership. And I think that's a sage point at all levels. And again, I want to re-echo that if you are out there and you're interested in running for state central committee, send a note to info@markforohio.com, info@markforohio.com. And Mark, you might want to just take a second to say about your plans to help people that want to run for state central committee and clean this shit up.
So we've decided that we are going to take the party back. This is the party of Abe Lincoln, Honest Abe, the first president elected as a Republican. And we need to take the party back by taking our Ohio Republican Party State Central Committee back. And I am going to use my personal funds to help do mailings and other database related things in the different districts so we can knock out these people who are there allowing this corruption to go on and on and on, kicking the can down the road every couple of years. So elections are in May 3rd of next year. You've got to get ballot access by February 3rd. So we've got to get moving on this. But I will pay for teams of a man and a woman, a male and a female in these various districts, the 33 districts around the state. They correspond to Senate districts. We'll pay for them, helping them campaign and helping them remove the swamp rhinos from these seats. This is the way our party is structured, and we need to take it back by voting them out.
All right. And just to be clear, I think you said February 3rd. I believe the date's February 2nd is the petition filing deadline
May 3rd
for running for state central committee, assuming it doesn't get changed. It may get changed because of all the issues with the redistricting, but the deadline is February 2nd unless you hear otherwise. All right. Let's move on to what your opportunity to talk about, whatever the heck you want to talk about. I know it's corruption stuff more, and we don't mean to, it's going to be Christmas. We want to be happy. We want to be happy.
Right.
That we're cleaning up, but let's go into free form.
So, Chris,
all right, Mark, whatever you want to talk about.
I do want to take off on what you just said about pessimism versus optimism. I'm rephrasing, but I'm extremely optimistic right now. I am getting messages every day, sometimes multiple times a day, from people who are saying, thank you for exposing this corruption. I didn't know it existed. I didn't know where to go to find it, to figure it out myself, but now I do. And the interesting thing is these people are hiding in plain sight. If you go look at campaign finance reporting to the Secretary of State in Ohio or the Federal Election Commission, you see all this. You see who these people are connected to. You see they work in this codependent cesspool of corruption where they're passing money back and forth. They work with unions. They work with law firms. They work with lobbyists. You can see it. And you start to connect the dots and you realize, oh my goodness, this is just an absolute cesspool. So we cannot, I don't know how we can possibly cede the reputation of honesty and integrity to the Democrats when our icon, if you will, is Abe Lincoln, honest Abe Lincoln, the first president elected as a Republican. We just have to continue to focus on this. And Chris, this corruption is not just in the Republican Party. It's not just in the Democrat Party. It's in all of the ecosystem, the sea of corruption that encompasses this, including not-for-profits, Christian organizations, lobbyists. It is just everywhere. School districts, higher education, the list goes on and on. Unions, big corporations. We are in a culture of corruption where it seems like everybody looks the other way, and it's just got to stop. It's the only way we're going to save our culture and our country.
Well, and it's I think I told you one time, Mark, I told you that I was talking with a person in Mumbai, India, and who told me that a lot of people that come from India to the U.S., a lot of the people that get the means to get educated in the U.S., so forth, in India, they don't go back sometimes because the corruption in India is so systemic that the people that have the best opportunities ahead of them don't think they can fix it. And we cannot let ourselves slip into a mode. And I'm very fearful that we're already slipped halfway down the road of people just throwing up their arms. Like, it's so, and it's not, and I know you feel this way, it's not insider, it's not black, white, Jewish, Christian, Muslim, Hindu, male, female. It's basically an insider versus outsider. Correct. And if you're an insider, it's a different system, and you can get away with lots of stuff. If you're an outsider, tough shitski, you know, your life is going to be what it's going to be.
You can't run a red light without getting ticketed. And they get away with murder, literally murder.
If you go watch, and people can watch the Ohio Election Commission meetings, you'll see people in there sweating bullets over like a $25 error on their report. Okay. And then you have, like Alan Freeman, $290,000 that you never reported. Larry Householder, which, by the way, I know for me there's more coming. There were a bunch of resources that were never reported anywhere, that were probably hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars getting spent. And you got the little guy worried about $25 and getting chewed out and having to pay a fine. You got the big guys getting away with bloody murder, and not even like the rules don't even apply to them, and they don't even care. And it's my example too of Rob Secor, that Jeff Longstreth was the signature on Generation Now, while at the same time he was the head of the House Republican Campaign Committee. How much more coordination can you have that the same person is running the dark money as is running the campaigns?
And they've moved on to other campaigns, statewide campaigns for Senate. I mean, this is
there's never any accountability.
Insane.
And it teaches people, and I know I've told you this, is that what it just makes me sick to see young people learning that this is the way it is. When you see them, to me, a lot of them that have gotten into politics young, they've never had a real job and felt real accomplishment. And I know you and I are both come from IT backgrounds, and there's real accomplishment when you flip the switch on a new system for a company and it works.
Or you get your ass kicked for it not working.
And you have to fix it right then and now, and it's black and white. It can process the transactions. But a lot of this political stuff, these young people, and frankly, when we were at the ORP Commissioners Party, you see some of the young, useless people running around there that you can tell. I just wish this person would not get involved in this kind of political stuff at such a young age, because I don't think it's good for our society. It teaches that a swamp type mentality.
But we have a candidate in this U.S. Senate race, Josh Mandel, who's never really held a job outside of politics. He was in the military. I thank him for his service. But other than that, it's all been elected offices, and just that web of corruption takes over.
All right. Well, let's go into a quick campaign update before we wrap up here.
So it's getting close to Christmas, and things have really slowed down, not only for us, but if you go to the other candidates' websites, you'll see that their events have slowed down. As I said, I'm visiting family here in Maryland. I'll be back tomorrow in Ohio, and then Wednesday, we have our noon brown bag lunch Zoom, where anybody can come on. I'll give a presentation on why I'm running and what my policy platform is, and then you can ask all the questions you want. It's an open forum. Then on Thursday, I will be at the Ohioans Defending Freedom Christmas party up in Parma Thursday night. And then we're also working, Chris, on rolling out a new strategy for radio ads that will start right after the first of the year. We were going to start them this month, but decided that it's better to wait because people need to enjoy the holidays. Our ads will be contentious, provocative, humorous, and show some contrast. We'll probably get some national press for some of them, like we did the last time. They'll all be done with an attitude of trying to educate voters, trying to energize voters, trying to let them know that they can be optimistic about the future of the best country on the face of the earth, and that we're going to call them like we see them. Unlike George Carlin, who used to say when he was acting like a sportscaster, when I don't see them, I make them up. We're not going to make them up. We're going to call them like we see them.
All right. So that's a quick campaign update. And I just want to add that really keep posted the Mark's campaign around February 4th, which is the next state central committee meeting.
Correct.
It's 2 days after the filing deadline to run for state central committee or to run for other offices. And it's going to be the last opportunity for the swamp creatures to do a crooked endorsement of Mike DeWine. And we'll see what happens. We'll see.
We've got some prizes. We've got some surprises in store.
We had some positive surprise. We've just got to all make sure that the Republican Party in Ohio understands that they work for Republican voters in Ohio, not for insiders that are trying to fulfill promises made to their friends in terms of endorsements and otherwise.
Absolutely.
All right. Anything else to add tonight, Mark, on the campaign update or anything else you wanted to hit on?
Nothing on the campaign update. If we're going to wrap it up, all I would say is to folks, please I am optimistic. We are going after a lot of corruption, but I'm optimistic about the future of our party, the future of our state, the future of our country. I see an awakening, not awakening, an awakening of people. I'm getting very, very optimistic messages every day. People who say they're praying for us and what we're doing in exposing this corruption. I think we've got some people either on the run or thinking of turning around and hightailing it out. And we are going to continue to put that pressure on. We're not going to stop. This is important work that we're doing. And while it's hard at times, while it seems to be thankless at times, it's also very satisfying when you see the results. We need folks to help us on the campaign. They can go to mark4ohio.com, mark4ohio.com. They can sign up, they can donate, they can volunteer. We just need all the help we can get to send the swamp rhinos packing.
All right. Thank you, Mark. Thanks for everybody that tuned in. Tell your friends about this and get people to watch it.
Thanks to everybody out there.
I appreciate, Mark, the authenticity and the going through stuff. And everybody, really look at that policy guide, mark4ohio.com/policy, and have a great week ahead. And we'll see you next Monday.
That's for Andrew. It's hard for me to do that, but yeah.
All right, later. Thanks, Mark.
Great evening.
Good night.
Bye-bye.